Hello, YouTube fan base. It is me, Cole Poots here, sounding like every other typical YouTube video maker. I am here today to do my vinyl collection. I've seen a lot of people that I admire that do music reviews on YouTube and kind of have similar videos like that where they show you their vinyl collection. My collection isn't too impressive, and I also need to get a new record player because I bought a Crossley last summer, which is pretty much like the most basic kind that you can get. So it doesn't sound the greatest when I do play my records, but it's cool to have one. It's cool to say that you have one, and it's cool that I've been able to start building my collection because I used to collect CDs. CDs aren't really popular anymore, and very few cars actually have slots where you could put your CD in there and listen to music. So anyways, let's get into it. This is my vinyl collection. I don't know if I'm gonna go in order of like my least favorite to my most favorite. Like, I like them all, but I'm just gonna give it to you straight. I'm gonna maybe tell you a little bit about the band, their significance on me, like where I got the record, and we're just gonna go from there. So anyways, first is My Chemical Romance, and it is Welcome to the Black Parade. So I started listening to My Chemical Romance probably somewhere back in middle school. My cousin Riley actually is really the person that I have to give credits to for getting me into My Chemical Romance, because I think I was in 8th grade, if I'm not mistaken. It was either 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 8th grade. And he had tickets for his birthday to go see My Chemical Romance, Neon Trees, and the Architects at Valor Ballroom. Originally, I said no because I hadn't listened to any of those bands, which is just a stupid decision because it doesn't matter if you've listened to them. You should always take up an offer to go to a concert because it may spark your interest, or you may end up liking them. You may discover a new artist or a new band that is amazing. And so at some point, I changed my decision. I told Riley I was going to go, and I'm so thankful that I did. One, because it was a great concert, even though I didn't know some of the songs, or actually most of the songs. It was a great show. Not only getting to see My Chemical Romance before they departed and ultimately split up, but Neon Trees, I don't know if you guys know who they are, but they had some big hits back in the day that were actually on commercials and on the radio. And even the Architects, as the opening band, were a good solid band to go see. And My Chemical Romance is probably one of my bigger influences in terms of bands, just because they were so unique. I mean, I was never like an emo kid throughout middle school or high school. I mean, that's really kind of who they appealed to as a collective, but they had good music. They had very emotional driven music, and from the perspective or the viewpoint of all these angsty teens that were, I mean, just unhappy with life and trying to figure out the complexity of fitting in with groups and cliques in high school. So this is, I mean, for me, it's probably a tie between Welcome to the Black Parade and Danger Days as far as like my favorite albums that they've ever put out. But I'd probably have to say My Chemical Romance, Black Parade is my favorite album. This is the third to last vinyl that I've gotten. I got this at Barnes & Noble in Jordan Creeks. Good, solid album artwork. I'm always a fan of album artwork, and I don't know if this is the same album artwork for their CD or online version. I think a lot of people will do different versions for vinyl. We got Doris by Earl Sweatshirt. Actually, this is like the front cover, technically the album cover without Doris across it for the online version in CD, so this must be an alternative version. This is probably, arguably, the best Earl in my opinion, and it's crazy because this is the first album that he ever put out. Not to discredit his new stuff, but Doris to me is probably my favorite version of Earl, and that's because when I was in high school, that's when I really got introduced to Loiter Squad, so Tyler the Creator, Earl Sweatshirt, Frank Ocean, I mean, all the people that they had in that group. And to me, this was like the most hungry Earl in his young age, you know, adjusting to this new life of fame that he was about to experience. She wanted him to get that experience done first because she knew how much like fame could fuck with somebody. So anybody that knows like Odd Future knows that around that time too, there was that whole message of like free Earl, trying to get him back into the States and back with Odd Future so he could start really, you know, making a career out of music. And I just think out of all the Earl Sweatshirt albums that I've listened to, and I do like them all, this is my favorite version because it's that adolescent Earl Sweatshirt making probably the biggest decision of his life to go through this career, and he knew that once he made that decision, it was going to change his life forever. It's probably it's probably top 5 for me, either top 5, top 10 albums of all time that I've listened to. I feel like Earl Sweatshirt kind of gets underappreciated as an artist because not everybody knows him, and he's not really everybody's cup of tea, but he's so talented, not only in terms of his rapping capabilities, but his production abilities too, because he can produce songs and he can craft them and make them sound so unlike anything that you've ever heard. But on top of that, his dad was a poet, and I feel like Earl is one of the most renowned MCs and lyricists in the game, but he doesn't get enough credit for it just because his shit isn't as popular as, say, you know, a Drake or a Kanye, who like everybody knows of. But he's one of the best. I mean, and if you're a rap fan, you can't discredit this guy because of the value that he brings to rap. Next, I guess if I'm just gonna stick to the same artist, we're gonna go with Feet of Clay. That might be hard to see because he likes to do black covers, by Earl Sweatshirt. Now, this isn't technically, I don't think this is an album. I think it's actually more of an EP because it's only like 7 tracks, or at least the deluxe edition I think is 9 tracks, and then when he released it, it was 7 tracks, and it's only like 15 minutes long. So he's obviously been taking a whole different route as he's gotten older, and he's really stuck to himself in making music. You know, Doris is probably, I think, like 15 tracks and nears close to an hour. And then his second album was I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, which was like 10 tracks, trimmed down a little bit. And then there's some rap songs, which was 15 songs, but it was only like 25 minutes. And then you get Feet of Clay, which again, I don't know if it's an album. I think it's more of an EP, but maybe it could be considered an album. 7 tracks, the original release, and then 9 tracks for the deluxe, and it's only like 15 minutes. So he's getting shorter and shorter and shorter and more methodical in his approach to delivering music. And I respect it. You know, this isn't going to be like a critically acclaimed album or piece from really anybody, but it's weird, it's experimental, and it's different. I personally like some rap songs a lot more than I did Feet of Clay, but I respect Earl as an artist. I respect his progression, his evolution, and his growth in making music, and that is why I will continue to support him and buy his shit, because whether it's my favorite Earl or not, like I said, Doris, his first project, is my favorite, it's still interesting to grow up with somebody, watch them grow up, and see how their music has evolved from that point on. Because like I was in high school when I found out who Earl was, so you know, going from Doris to this, it's like you've seen the expanse and the change that Earl has undertaken. Again, this is not really going to be an album that anybody like loves to death. It's a timestamp of where he's at musically, artistically, creatively. So you have to appreciate it. But I forgot to mention with Doris, I got that for Christmas from my parents this last year, 2020. And then this one I bought myself, and I Where did I go? Oh, I just got it off of his website. And I also got a crew neck with it, which was pretty dope. This one's really cool. I don't know if I should be showing... Most of these have black as their vinyl, but this one is actually a different color. This one is like a see-through gold translucent color, and it has like a... I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on camera, but it says Feet of Clay Earl sweatshirt, and it's got that guy that's standing. It has that design on there, so... Anyways, see, I can never fucking get this shit in. Just there we go. Kids See Ghosts by Kanye West and Kid Cudi. It's not like one of my favorite pieces, although I respect it a lot, but like when I was out and about and browsing for vinyl, I saw it and I was like, okay, well, I have to get this because I do love these artists, and you gotta find the rare ones that are out there. You gotta snatch them before they're gone, especially like if they're in public. But yeah, this one's just a short little 7 songs, but it is considered as an album. Really interesting to see a pair like Kid Cudi and Kanye West come together. They've always been pretty good friends throughout their music trajectory. I remember listening to like Erase Me back in the day when I was in middle school going into high school, and both of these men have been big influences on me growing up. I don't really listen to them as much now as I'm older. I've kind of taken it a step further in terms of my musical interest, but you always got to respect the OGs that helped pave the way for a lot of artists. Kid Cudi has always been different. Talked a lot about mental health, anxiety, and depression. I always appreciated that. I didn't even know what that shit was when I was young, but I've experienced that as I've gotten older. Kanye West, the very outspoken but very creative mastermind that he is, always has something interesting to say, so this is an interesting pair, an interesting duo, and a great solid project, so that's why I had to get it for vinyl. Plus, I've always been big on like concept albums for one, but album artwork, and I just think it's very interesting. I don't know, I mean, you gotta give credit to whoever did this album artwork, but it's cool, right? Like, I love the colors. You got the demon guys over here. It's interesting. We got The Greatest Hits by Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, if you bought this as a CD, there are more than 12 songs, but on vinyl, Greatest Hits by Red Hot Chili Peppers, there are only 12 songs. I would say out of all the pieces of vinyl that I have, this one sounds the best on the record player, and I'm assuming because Red Hot Chili Peppers is actually a band. You can see with most of my vinyl, it's been rap, hip-hop, so that probably makes a difference in sound when you're putting that on vinyl. But this was actually the first one I got when I got my record player. I was at Jordan Creek and I saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers Greatest Hits, and I was like, bro, you can never go wrong with Red Hot Chili Peppers. I actually had a conversation the other day with my friend Paul Hyatt and then my friend Jacob Kuehl. Shout out to those two homies. We were at the coffee shop and we were talking about music and like who are our top 5 artists at this moment, which it's so hard to pinpoint a top 5 when there's so much good music out there and your interests are always changing. But like, if I had to craft a top 5 of like all time artist, rapper, whatever, these guys are in there. They have influenced me a lot as a kid. My dad, this was like his favorite album, this is his favorite band and probably still is to this day. And I remember just every day in the car when we were growing up, when me and my brother were young, my mom and my dad would pick us up from like school or from our babysitters. He was always playing Red Hot Chili Peppers, and so it kind of set the stage for my musical interest. My parents grew up listening to like 80s hairballs, so like Motley Crue, AC/DC, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, but then at the kind of early 90s, late 80s, you get people like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, Blink-182, Nirvana, stuff like that, that kind of ascended that genre in a different direction. And Red Hot Chili Peppers, by far, are one of the best bands and one of the most major influences that I've ever had in terms of music, because they were the first band, artist, whatever, and I've said this many times to many people, you know how, obviously, when you listen to good music, you can't help but sing their lyrics along as you're listening to the song. This was the first band that not only would I emulate their lyrics, like I would sing the lyrics as I was listening to their music, but the instrumentals of the Red Hot Chili Peppers to me were lyrics. So even when the lyrics weren't on, you were humming the instrumentals and treating them as if they were lyrics. And I thought that was so powerful, and that was a realization that I had had over the years of like, okay, this band has done something special to me because it's made me think differently about music. And that happened as a kid, you know. It's not like I went my whole life and then I was 18 years old and I found out who the Red Hot Chili Peppers were. Like, this was these guys were literally like probably one of my first big influences in music. So yeah, it only made sense for it to be the first vinyl that I ever bought. All right, here we go. We got Tame Impala, The Slow Rush, which was released just about a year ago. I think it was sometime in March of 2020. Again, a very appealing album cover. I had heard a lot of good things about Tame Impala before I actually went through and listened to them. This was the first glimpse I got at Tame Impala, so latest project is the first music that I ever heard them release. And this is a great album. It was in my top 10. If you haven't seen that video just yet, that's on my YouTube channel. I did a top 10 album review for 2020. I can't remember where I placed this album, but it was in there. It was probably like 5 or 6. Kevin Parker, phenomenal artist. And again, just very aesthetically pleasing of an album cover. I don't know where they got the concept for it, but it's beautiful. Like how you have like all this sand, this quicksand that's coming in the windows, and then like through the windows is a clear open sky with like maybe just one cloud. And then it almost in some ways looks kind of like a prison, like a red room of a prison. But it's a beautiful piece. I remember listening to this album and just thinking like it's one of those groups where their music transports you to a different place. Now, a lot of music does that for me, but some are unearthly, and I feel like Tame Impala fits that mold of not necessarily psychedelic, but just makes you really think philosophically about life. Very good album, very good group, and I am eager to hear more Tame Impala as the years go on. Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown. And I couldn't be happier because not a lot of people, again, with Earl, underrated, but should be appreciated. Not a lot of people know who Danny Brown is, and he's a special artist. I haven't listened to everything that he's put out there, but Atrocity Exhibition is like one of my favorite albums of all time. It's weird, it's grimy, it's experimental, it's different than anything that you've ever heard. It's all about Danny Brown going through like an insane drug trip, and he just takes you on this experience of a lifetime of like highs and lows and what that life is like of like doing drugs. And it's just an amazing album for the sound of it and the route that he took with this album. Not to say that it was unexpected, because I wouldn't be unexpected for Danny Brown to do something like that, but I really appreciate that, because I think a lot of artists get afraid of going outside of their comfort zone and doing like creating a different type of music that they've never ever produced in their entire career. And Danny Brown did like a fucking insane 180. Like, he could have made music that sounded like his older stuff and appealed to his fan base in that context, where, you know, they'd be like, oh wow, like this sounds like the shit that I know that you're used to putting out. But instead, he went the commendable risky route and he made fucking Atrocity Exhibition. And again, one of those albums that I think should be talked about more heavily in terms of like in the rap community. Like, this is a staple mark because it's so different, and we should appreciate that, and we should encourage creativity and you know, taking a chance on yourself. And I think Danny Brown captured that very well in this album. Last but certainly not least, we have Swimming by Mac Miller. Funny story. Yeah, no, I actually got this from my ex. Shout out to my ex for getting me this. This is probably the best present she ever got me. Definitely favorite album that Mac Miller has ever put out. You guys know me. You should know me if you're on this channel. Mac Miller's my favorite artist, person, everything wrapped into one. That's who I look up to. I'm not going to get too much into his death because I've made a whole separate video on a tribute to Mac Miller and the reflection of his life. But to me, this album was so important for him to put out before he died. You know, people talk about him almost forecasting his death, alluding to what was inevitably going to happen. And yeah, I partly agree with that. I mean, I think he was really in a tough place and was suffering. The guy was very self-aware, so when you listen to his music, that's exactly what you get, is everything that he was facing. And so he wasn't afraid to admit that to himself. But you know, I've seen interviews with him, and he's talked about how every time he puts out a new album, it's an experience, and it's a learning curve for him. Confront issues that he's been facing, or like parts of himself that he's not really happy about. Swimming to me is my favorite album from Mac and his discography, because it feels like for once, I'm not discrediting anything else that he's put out, because it's all beautiful, it's all great, it's all relevant, but I feel like this album in particular was something that he really wanted to make, and he finally did that. Like, he finally made music that like he was all about. And not saying that the music before is not music that he was all about, but like this was a huge turning point for him in the fact that he was really discovering what he could do as an artist and where his sound was evolving to. And I really appreciate that, because again, going back to like Danny, Earl Sweatshirt, people that do things that are sort of unconventional in their art and in their craft, sometimes get overlooked because it's not what got them to the place that they're at. But I never understand that, because as humans, we're all evolving, we're all changing all the time. I mean, I feel like I change every single day. And so why the hell would you ever want an artist to create something that they've already made? To me, it's like this album was just a small glimpse of where Mac was establishing himself and where he was preparing himself to go. Because then you get Circles with the posthumous release, and then there was supposed to be a third album in the works. I just think that Mac was exploring and finding himself as an artist, and it's one of the greatest music tragedies, in my opinion, of all time. And I know I'm going to be biased because Mac is my favorite artist, but it's true. This guy is a legend and had so much going for him, so talented, so nice, so relatable, so open, so honest, so truthful. And he put all of that into his music, and that's why I think I appreciated him so much, is because it was unlike anything that I had ever heard from anybody else. So this is my favorite piece of vinyl that I have. I'm planning on growing my collection, getting my taxes back, and I got a pretty hefty amount coming through, so I'm at least going to treat myself and buy one more piece of vinyl. Maybe over the years, as I collect more, I'll do a second video on it. But I was like, you know what? I gotta show people like what I listen to, like what I got in my closet of great music. But anyways, yeah, that's all I have. So that was in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of vinyl. Anyways, I love you guys. See you sometime soon.